Hi everyone, I hope you're good guys. Welcome to a new video. So today we're gonna talk about acid, and I've made a new rack to create acid sound. So I know I already made a rack, but it's more like kind of the first one was kind of a classic acid. I will show you later on as well. And today it's more like a bit more modern and a bit different. You're gonna see I use a different type of filter than the usual low pass filter. And I will show you as well like the step on how to write a basic acid techno pattern. And yeah, let's get started. Let's see how it sounds. So what I made like by different, I wanted to really create this kind of growling acid. So you can, it's kind of, so that's the first type. So I made the rack, so obviously you're gonna have different kind of preset. So I call it wow because it's kind of wow, like this kind of sound, but yeah. Can have maybe like more. And finally, last one. So I made, and I put like kind of clean saw and clean square, which is kind of basic, like you could say like the default one. So one with the sawtooth, one with the square. So obviously you can straight away. You have the same for the square. And so I've put a couple of effects and a couple of parameters. I'm going to explain to you this once I've created the rack from scratch. But you have as well a bit more. You can go a little bit more. You have as well what I call classic. So everything is going to be available for free. I will put the link in the description. You can go and grab it, all the Midi file of the sense file. I want to show you a couple of more presets. So everything has been made with this rack. So if you want this kind of SFX scrolling kind of acid, I haven't made the kick, but this was just for fun. And then you can try different things, kind of doing acid, but and you can go even over. You can create this kind of more soft acid as well. It's quite versatile. I try to always make my rack as versatile as I can, so this way there is a lot of room for experimentation. So yeah, let's recreate the rack from scratch, and let me grab actually wavetable. So here the idea, usually acid sound is quite simple. It's a square or sawtooth waveform, and you pass through a low pass filter and you crank up the resonance. The filter is a special one, but here I've done the things a little bit different. So let me actually maybe grab a pattern, so this way we can. So here I wanted to do things different, and I wanted to take a bandpass filter, and I really like bandpass filter because it's kind of really accentuate a certain frequency. So every time when you program, or even when you use the preset, you have to be really careful about which position your filter is according to which note you are playing, because both gonna impact a lot the character of your sound. So I want to 12 dB, and obviously you want to crank up the resonance. So now I'm gonna group this, and we're gonna start obviously to assign the macro. So for this rack, we're gonna go with 12 macro, and I'm just gonna rename everything quickly, so this way we can just map after. So yeah, we have everything renamed. So we're gonna map the cutoff, the frequency to the first macro, and we're gonna map the resonance to the second macro. Second thing I've done, I use the filter with the drive one, so this way you can crank up the drive if you want. And another thing with acid sound is the saturation or distortion, whatever you use to saturate the sound, it's as important as the sound itself. That's what's really gonna give some characters. So basically by default in my rack I've put some distortion and saturation, but obviously feel free to put your own, deactivate maybe the one I put and put your own. So I'm gonna map the drive filter to the filter drive. Here is the macro here, so that's gonna be great. You know, if you want something a bit more saturated, crazy, you can crank it up. If you want to stay a bit more classic sound, you can just add a little bit dB just to kind of add a bit of harmonics, but without changing too much the sound. Now in terms of waveform, I could have kept the square and the basic from this basic shape, but I'm gonna go over vintage and I'm gonna choose the sub 3 shape. I just found it sounded really good, especially the square is like kind of hollow a little bit. And what you wanna do is here map this position marker to wave, because basically you can see here what the position is gonna do is changing the waveform. So here you have like a pulse square, and then you go until around 40%, you have more like a sawtooth, and then when you go down you have like kind of between the sine and the triangle. So this is a great way if you want to have acid sound, but that sound a little bit different than the classic one. So you can go through all of this position and have different tone. So we're gonna assign that. I'm gonna go to 100% and keep to the classic. All right, one thing I haven't done is here you can see it's in poly. We need to put in mono. It's always changed the sound a little bit. I don't really know why, but it's always like this. If you wanna play in mono, it's usually sounding a bit better. And I'm gonna map the glide to the glide parameter. So this is really nice because when you have sometimes jump between the same note but 2 octaves different, you can having this kind of. You cannot hear it now because there is not that much effect, but I will show you later. So now we can start to shape a little bit the amplitude envelope. So one thing you want to do is maybe bring down the sustain. So the release, you can get something very short or you can get a bit longer. I leave it around 150. This is up to you. You can go a little bit more shorter if you want something a bit more sharp. But yeah. And then the attack and decay I'm gonna map to the macro. This way I will have instant access to them. And one important thing now is to have your filter modulated by an envelope. So you want the envelope to control your filter, and around I'm gonna put 30. And then the way you want to shape that is you want no sustain at all to really have these plucky things. Same, the release I put something very short. It's up to you if you are looking more like for a very sharp sound or something in between. I leave it like in between. And then I'm gonna map again the attack to the attack and the decay to the decay. This way when I sweep the macro is modulating both the attack from the amplitude and from the filter. Now, one thing you want to do is being able to modulate the filter envelope modulation. If you want to have your envelope modulating your filter a little bit more stronger, or if you want to be a little bit more soft, the way to do that, if you go to value and you have the peak here, and this way it's going to act kind of a filter envelope modulation, because usually you should do it here, but here you can see I cannot map this. So I put 30. And as a value here, I take the peak and I put to filter amp. And so this way, that's what's gonna. You see, like here, my filter is not modulated. And here my filter is modulated. All right, and in terms of sound, it's pretty much done. But before to go into the effect, there is few things that I've done in the MIDI. So this is some modulation and parameter that you shouldn't overlook, because this little detail is gonna make it a little bit more interesting and a little bit less boring and kind of make it stand out a little bit from a basic sound. So first you have the velocity controlling the amplitude. So I put a little bit much. This is especially good for acid techno because, you know, in the original 303 you have a kind of accent which is gonna kind of accentuate a certain step. So this way, when you program your acid pattern with this rack, you can play some notes at a low velocity and play some notes at a higher velocity and kind of giving some impulse. That can be great. And I want it as well to the velocity have an impact on the filter, but on the smaller amount. So this way, again, the higher the velocity, the higher your filter is gonna open. But this is just like subtle, but it's add a bit of it's gonna make your send patch a little bit more expressive. Now, one thing I wanna do as well is because you use a bandpass filter, what is happening if your filter is down and you play a low note, you're gonna hear it. But if your filter is down and you play a high note, you're not gonna hear it because obviously your bandpass filter is gonna be around that zone and you're gonna play a note around this zone. So what you wanna do is basically having the note modulating the filter. So if I put 100%, this way, when I'm gonna play a higher note, the filter gonna straight away go up. If I play a low note, you can see the filter stay down. If I play a high note, the filter is going up. So this way, your filter is kind of following the note you're playing, and the higher the note, the higher the filter. Now, there is one thing I've made. You can see here you have random here, and it's basically gonna add some randomness to any parameter every time you press a note. So what I've done is I put 0.1 to a lot of parameter. So like this is gonna all the time slightly change a little bit, a little bit the parameter, like really to add a slight randomness. And you can basically do that to all of your parameter. And yeah, when we've done that, it's time to go into the effect. So like I said, this is really what's gonna give the character to your sound. So I'm gonna first add the reverb, so this way it's gonna be a bit less dry. I use my basic default reverb, and you can map this to reverb amount and decay time. And one thing I'm gonna add as well, it's a limiter, because sometimes you can go a little bit crazy, and especially with the resonance and this acid sound, it's safer to put a limiter just in case you go too crazy and you don't realize, and to avoid to just destroy your speaker and your ears. It's just security. It doesn't really is gonna work. So the first things I'm gonna use saturator. So saturator is great to add harmonics. Usually I like to use this device to kind of enhance the sound, add a bit of harmonics, but without changing too much the nature of the sound. Here I go a little bit different because I wanted something a little bit crazy, so I'm gonna use the hard curve mode. If you find it too hard, you can go back to the analog clip or use the medium curve in the middle. And here I'm gonna use it, I'm gonna put the drive to power, and I'm gonna as well map the output. So what I wanna do is here, the more I put the drive, the more I reduce the output. This way I have a kind of a gain compensation, and you can really hear what the effect does. So you go to map power. First you want to be from 0 because you don't want to be negative. And then what I usually do is I put at the maximum. And you see, that's why you need to have a limiter. So here basically, when I have the macro at the minimum, it's going to the minimum to the maximum. And the more I go, the more I get gain. I want to happen the opposite. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go 0 here and minus 36 here. So when I start, I'm at 0. And the more I go, the more I reduce. So here it's a little bit too much. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna bring back here until I have more or less the same level. You see, it's more or less matching. Anyway, it's a distortion plugin, so if it doesn't match exactly perfectly, it's not a big deal, but you know, to just have everything more in control. Alright, now next device I wanted to add, it's an overdrive. Usually overdrives work super well with, and here I've kind of used it classic way. I've kind of reduced the bands, and what the idea was to, according to my filter position, the filter of the overdrive is gonna move. For example, if I have here at 324 Hz my filter, my cutoff, I want to be at 324. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna map this to the frequency. So this way now, and I've done that because if I don't do that, You see, when I go with the filter in the higher frequency, here it's not following, so obviously it's still gonna generate harmonics and overdrive on the low frequency and not on the high frequency. So this way, when I map both, I have and then the parameter, it's already sounding pretty nice. I'm just gonna put a bit more dynamic. And you wanna map the dry wet to your overdrive device. And here you have the tone as well, which is basically kind of, according if you go low, it's more like a darker, and if you go high, it's more like a brighter. And I'm gonna map this to the filter this way, same way. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So then I've added an amp, but I deactivated. This is just, I put it in case if you want to use it. But usually if you go in rock mode and maybe add a bit of gain. This is really if you want to go crazy. On the end, I didn't put it because it was a bit too excessive, and I will personally never use that much that, but I know some people they're gonna like, so I've left it. One thing you can add as well is a bit of delay. And yeah, I think by default I deactivated, but you can anyway put your own or just activate it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So now you know what each macro does. I explained everything here. The only thing I wanted to show you is the glide as well. So for example, when you have basically not overlapping each other, like here, you see with the glide is nothing really happening, but if I bring the glide, you're gonna hear a pitch modulation, especially here, rather than no pitch, no variation, no pitch modulation. And yeah, here you can hear it. So yeah, that's a bit like kind of a bit different than, so this was my first rack I've made here. And this is more like kind of classic acid techno, so I will still use this one for kind of classic acid stuff. And if I want something a bit more modern sounding, or a little bit like especially for this kind of I will go for this one. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you like the sample that I use, the kick is from my raw techno sample pack. I will put it in the description. It's a great way to support me. Same goes with the hats as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it for today, guys. I hope you liked this video. Thank you very much for watching, and see you soon, guys. Bye bye. Don't forget to like and subscribe.